Welcome to episode 63 of Think Big with Michael Zellner. All positive, no politics. My guest today is Rod Bland. Rod is a drummer from Memphis, Tennessee. He is currently a very active musician and is the founding member of Rod Bland and Members Only Band. He also plays with Will Tucker, Ashton Riker and the Memphis Royals, Brimstone Jones, the Blues Players Club, and with the Reverend Sean Amos. He is the son of Bobby Blue Bland and also the godson of B.B. King. Welcome to the show, Rod.
Hey, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Tell us something interesting about yourself that most people might not know.
As far as interesting that most people might not know, as a little boy, probably about 9 or 10, in addition to wanting to be a drummer, I wanted to be a pro wrestler. Yes, I thought I was going to be the second coming of the Junkyard Dog. Yeah.
Did you go to wrestling matches here locally and stuff like that too?
You know what? I never got to go see any of Memphis wrestling at the Coliseum. I feel like that's an aspect of my childhood that I was violently deprived of. I did see a couple of matches at the Coliseum, but that was, the WWF.
Right.
At that time, as it was known, 1989. And then later on, saw Nitro and Thunder there at the Coliseum because by that time, WWE was at the Pyramid. So
I have some great memories of wrestling as a little kid going to see Jerry Lawler, Andy Kaufman matches, and just some fun times.
Yeah, my grandmother, God rest her soul, my maternal grandmother, she got me into wrestling, and my mother has hated it ever since. It was like, it's your mom's fault,
Right.
I'd spend the weekend with her. I'd come down on a Friday night. She lived in Whitehaven, and I had free reign of the TV up until it was time for, as she would always say, I get to see what Lawler did, Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee. And, I got exposed to so much what I call culture when it comes to wrestling. Like I bought in as a kid. I thought what I watched on Channel 5, no, that's real.
That's exactly what I thought.
It's what you're watching on the USA Network with all the animals and stuff. No, that's fake.
Yeah. Right.
Excuse me, that's not real.
Right.
You shouldn't use the F word. I'm very sensitive to wrestlers' plight.
Right.
You don't use that F word ever.
When I used to see Jerry Lawler, get the bloody head and everything, that's why I would defend it. No, that's real. Look at that, he's bleeding. Of course, years later, when you find out what it really was, you sort of laugh. I wasn't like disappointed. I was just more about laughed about it, like I was being a kid.
Sometimes the old heads, as I call them, the guys that I would spend a lot of time around in either my dad's band or BB's band, man, that ain't nothing but ketchup. That's ketchup. But see, as time has gone on and things have become more exposed, the business, if you will,
right,
you learn that, like Flair used to have a blade taped to his fingertip. And, now I find myself wanting to go back to watching those Flair and Funk matches, or Sting and Luger, or Sting and Flair, whatever, and like really try to pinpoint when Flair went for the blade, or this is the kind of things these are the things that I will nerd out about. I love wrestling and every aspect of it.
Awesome.
It's great entertainment.
You grew up in the suburb of Memphis in Germantown. You went to Houston High School. What are some of your fondest memories of your childhood?
My parents moved to Germantown early 80s. So, Dogwood Elementary, all the way up to sixth grade. Then I was the first seventh grade class of Houston. Back then it was like seventh, eighth, ninth, and as the years progress, so did the grades.
Right.
I think the fondest memory I ever had was there'd be times that my dad would park the bus in the driveway, and it would keep people from like looking in. And my dad was such an expert driver, in my opinion. Sneeze.
God bless you.
Thank you. It's not COVID. I had my second booster last week.
I saw that too.
Team Moderna. I didn't know I posted anything about that. I'm kind of bad about the least little thing. Sometimes I'll be like, "Hey, you should know this." But my dad would back the bus in, like he would literally come down the Neshoba and then come like halfway past the front yard, and then just like back it in like nobody's business. And I always thought that that was the coolest thing ever, because at that time he was in his early 50s, and you know, much like Albert King, they still like to drive their own buses from time to time. Now, my dad always had a driver, if you will, but every now and again he'd come up front, tap the driver on the shoulder. All right, pull her over. Let me get in the cockpit. And he did that up until I want to say 93, before he had the triple bypass that he would endure in 1995, something like that. 93, 2, something like that.
You didn't grow up too far from me. Where off the Neshoba did you guys live?
Oh, right there down the street from what eventually became GPAC, when it was just the Civic Center where we'd go like shoot hoops, or I would shoot hoops and then want to play the old WWF All Stars video game that they always had on the top floor. Um, yeah, right there at Neshoba.
Yeah, you were about maybe 10 minutes. I was off Kirby right there when Neshoba and Cottingham met. Right off there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I lived out
the way
Massey.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
familiar
So
with that.
not far at all. You went to college at Lambeth University, but you came back to Memphis after 1 year for your true love at the time, music.
I had my head in the clouds. I disappointed my parents severely by not giving my all. But like even up there in Jackson, I never stopped having the aspirations or thoughts of playing drums. It's what I've really ultimately, it's always been my first love, and I'll probably die with that being my first and only true love. Sorry to a select few ladies, but drumming has always been so much a part of me. I started when I was 3, destroying pots and pans. Started doing shows with my dad when I was 5, wearing a ridiculously hideous powder blue tuxedo, complete with the ruffle shirt. And no, you will not see those photos. I think I have successfully had them dormant, and they will stay that way for the foreseeable future. But I remember pledging Kappa Sigma. Don't ask me how or why, but it happened, and I became the first man of color to not only receive a bid, but to actually, go through the process and join the fraternity. And there was a party that we had during homecoming, and they hired a band. And like, such a huge Pearl Jam fan, and like the band was trying to play Animal, and like the drummer was like, "Man, I told you, I don't know that song." And like I just happened to walk by you know,
You didn't happen to walk by. That was supposed to happen.
you know what? You are the third person in the last 48 hours to remind me that things don't just happen. It's supposed to happen.
Synchronicity.
Great song from the Police.
Yes.
So I was walking by as the guitar player was yelling at the drummer, and man, I really wanted to play Animal. And it was like I stopped. I said Animal as in Pearl Jam. And of course, I get the look like, yeah, like, what do you? And I know it. Sure, you do. No, seriously, I know the song. You play drums? Are you any good? And see, I didn't let any of my lineage, if you will, none of that ever was a focal point while I was up there at Lambeth. I was like, I could probably hold my own, right? And me being such a huge fan of Dave Abruzzese, the guy that recorded on Verses, like, they're like, all right, man, come on, because I really want to play a song. You better not fuck it up. Excuse my language.
You're right.
And I was like, as my dad would say, full of piss and vinegar. So I was hot when the way he talked to me. It was like, I counted it off, not like, clicking the sticks, but like I've heard Dave Abruzzese do it so many times. Open the hats up. And like the guitar player that was talking all the trash turned around, whipped his head around, and looked at me, and I was like, in my head, I'm like, this is not what you wanted, but you're getting it, right? The one time, that I just had a lot of bravado at 18, 19, and finished the song there, like, did my best attempted being Dave Abruzzese. And the guy was like, dude, no, that was like really good. You know anything else from Pearl Jam? I said, what do you know? Dude, I always wanted to play Footsteps. 1, 2, he's counting us in. He's counting us in. All right. So, and then of course, I go, hey man, you know any blues? I was like, a little bit. Hey, do you know Pride and Joy? It's like a little bit. It's a shuffle. When it comes to playing blues, especially shuffles, that's kind of like my wheelhouse. So it just turned into one of those times where I had a great time and met some other like-minded musicians, and then there was another party at the Kappa Sigma house where I got to, do some more drumming, and did more drumming than I did studying and going to class. So ultimately, my parents were like, come on back to Germantown. We need to have a serious talk. Excuse me. So I came home, and that was around about January of 96, maybe February. And my dad suggested that since I have such an affinity for wanting to be on the road and playing drums, to see how tough it is, why don't you come out with me? So prior to that, it was always summer vacation, when we're out of school, the winter break, go out on the road, play drums, have my kit next to the other drummer. So the spring of 96, he would always do a lot of co-headlining shows with BB King. And at that time, BB was running 2 drummers. So it just was such an easy thing. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was just like soaking it all in. And it just made the itch that much more insufferable. And I had to keep it going. All the while my mom wanted me back in school because she's of that mindset. Not so much that she's not supportive, but she wanted me to have something to fall back on. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. But when it came to that, my eggs were in that basket. They still are, even at 45. So
Going back for a minute to the age of 3, and you just talked about, you weren't the typical 3-year-old. It's like you said, you were destroying pots and pans. You said, quote, I would go in the kitchen at my grandmother's and start pulling out stuff. Other kids would be playing with building blocks, and I'd be building a drum kit, or I'd take spoons and go into the living room or dining room and hit furniture, unquote. Your dad got on to you about it, and your grandmother set him straight, and she said, quote, leave him alone. One day you're going to need him, and he's going to be your drummer. Smart woman. Now, I know you come from a musical family and background, but come on, 3 years old, about 1980, kids are outside playing or watching cartoons, but not you.
Don't get it twisted. I had my cartoon fix.
Okay, good.
I was
good.
I was all about Bugs Bunny and all that, and then of course, at that time in the '80s, you had He-Man and Thundercats and Voltron. Transform. I was in all that.
Good.
I had my action figures. These were action figures. These were not dolls. I had my action figures, and but it was like, okay, enough of that. Let me get these sticks right here, and let me sit down and try to do what I saw Peony doing, or let me see if I can remember what George was doing, or just playing along to the records. And by records, I mean cassette tapes. I had a Walkman. And, you didn't have the Walkman in the 80s, but like that's what it was like for me. If I heard my dad playing something in his vehicle, I was always either slapping my knees, my legs, or on the dash of the car. Or I would he used to get so mad, but my mom would get more mad than he would. You go to the dry cleaners and they give you your clothes on a hanger that had the I don't even know how you would describe it, but the little stick thing where the ends of the hanger would fit inside for your pants.
Yes.
I would always take the ends of the hanger out of that, those little thin little roll sticks or whatever. Those are my sticks that I used when I couldn't get my hands on drumsticks. And like, just doing my thing like I thought I was on stage. Thought I was killing the game, as a good friend would say. Killing the game. And not knowing that, my parents needed their pants or their garment, specifically laid out on this hanger. And here I am just
in your own world.
I was the king of that world.
Awesome. Just a few years later, you're 5 years old and the kid joins the legend up on stage, and you said, quote, I was like the little sideshow novice, I guess, as part of the show with a 10-piece band, 10 and a half counting me, unquote. I bet that had to be a lot of fun for you. And no, not that your dad's band needed any more attention, but having you up there, that little 5-year-old probably, got more attention. What was it like for you to be up on stage?
Then to this day, there's no better feeling than being on a stage playing music. As a musician, you love to play to a packed house, if you will. But if you're really into what you're doing, and most of us are, 5,000, 500, or even 5, you're up there and you're playing your ass off, because there's no better public feeling that you can have than being on a stage playing music.
Please share with the audience a little bit about your trip to New York. You're around the age of 8. You meet a big fan of your dad's, but wasn't a fan of yours. Who was that rock and roll, star on stage that was with you guys that night?
That was the incomparable Mick Jagger. One one of those nights where I was fortunate to be on stage and on my little blue Slingerland kit that I still have and use to this day. And I never knew the level of love and respect that Mick had for my dad until I obviously grew up and learned and understood just who and what the Rolling Stones are and what they mean, not just to music in general, but even to the blues, because their name and everything about them is a direct result of the blues. So, the condensed version, on stage playing with my dad, unbeknownst to me, here's Mick Jagger. I don't know him from a can of paint. I'm so, at that age, uncultured in music. I know that sounds strange. Bobby Blue Bland's son, B.B. King's godson, but you just classified yourself as uncultured. Yes, because at that time, all I knew, and even at a young age, wanted to know was my dad, BB, Johnny Taylor, sometimes Albert King, sometimes Little Milton. Albert King, Uncle Albert, if you will, used to pick on me as a kid. We'll get into that one later. So Mick's on stage having a grand time, and we're playing. I don't know what's going on, but I did know I did not like the sound of a harmonica in my left ear. And he's, doing it, he's being Mick,
Right.
He's being cool. I didn't know that was cool at the time because I'm a kid. I don't know shit other than your harmonica is in my ear. Please make it stop. So you fast forward, I grow up and I learn truly who Mick Jagger is, what the Rolling Stones are. And I hear the stories about how Mick loved my dad and how him and Keith Richards begged my dad's guitar player, God rest his soul, Mel Brown, to introduce them to my dad because, they were good friends or whatever. And it's like, wow, that happened to me. I was on, wow, right? So you fast forward to 2018 and Mick was in town. I think he was working on a documentary with Jerry Lee Lewis, right? With The Killer. And someone tipped me off that he was at Blue City. And my mission was to not seek an audience with him asking for anything, but 30 plus years later to say thank you. And so the gentleman that was on guard duty, I didn't waste any words. I said, my name is Rod Bland. My father is Bobby Blue Bland. Years ago, and I told him the story. He ducks in, and then next thing you know, the curtain is opened, and there's Mick, and he stands up to shake my hand, and he telling me I'm not going to do an impression of him, but he was going on about how much he loved him and this, that, and the third. He starts telling a story about that night, and he goes, I don't know what possessed me to think that I could sing like or as well as Bobby Bland, but I wanted to sing, and his son was there on drums next to the other drummer, and so I wanted to tell him the story, and he remembered it, shake his hand and say thank you, and if he felt up to it and the time permitted, grab a photo, and I'm on my merry way. I was not allowed to leave. We sat, we talked. and I got to hear, some pretty cool stories that probably wouldn't be heard unless you were in his inner circle or unless you were a high profile musician, rock and roll star. It was like you had to be a fly on the wall to hear this. And once again, I was appreciative of the fact that I was well received and very gracious and giving of his time. And it's just one of those moments where it was supposed to happen, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So there's that.
Great story. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
You started on percussion for your dad's band when you were in high school, and when you turned 19, you were ready for dad, and dad was ready for you to join him, and you're up on stage. You're his one and only drummer, and you said, quote, "It grew to the point where he knew that I was always going to be dependable, that very seldom would he have to turn back and look to give me a cue. I knew a lot of the time what he's going to do before he does it," unquote. Rod, to be that good at 19, where your dad knew that he could count on you to come through. I mean, he already had to have been so proud of you.
Well, I'd like to think that he was. Again, from the age of 5, I was always playing drums in some kind of capacity with my dad on stage. And the years of 1991 till about mid 95, my dad and BB doing their co-headlining shows, BB was running drums and a percussionist. And the percussionist was just a bass drum shy of it being a full drum kit anyway. You had congas, a snare drum, timbales, remote hi-hats on the stand where the cable is connected to the pedal. So, you got that going. Various cymbals. It's like, okay, just fucking put up 2 drum kits. You should bleep that. Sorry.
It's okay. I've had much worse on here. It's okay.
Okay. I'll try to rein it in.
It's okay.
I don't want my kids from School of Rock going, "Oh my God, Mom, Mr. Rod's cussing." So around about the spring of 95, we're doing our runs together, if you will, and it was double drums. And so I was like, yes, no more sore hands, because I'm not a skilled percussionist in terms of how to strike the kunga. There's a certain finesse and technique. I'm like the average person that sees a conga or a bongo, like, it's not how you play them. But it was something to get me through and still be able to play on stage with my dad. A little kunga here, and switch to these snare drums and remote hi-hats. And don't forget about the tambourine. So by the time, 19, it was in 1996 Starlight Jazz Festival, and the regular drummer no-showed, and it was getting close to crunch time where we had to leave Memphis. And my mom's like, "What are you gonna do? Where are you gonna find a drummer? What are y'all gonna do?" And it was like a TV sitcom. Both when she said, "What are y'all gonna do for a drummer?" the band leader said, "We don't need to do anything. We got one." Who? And my dad and Joe Harden, the music director, band leader, like a sitcom, just looked at each other and then pointed at me. And again, one of those, like, I'm coming into the room, like, dun, dun, dun. And she was like, "Are you sure?" "Yeah, we're sure. He's known the show." Like, that's the thing. I have such an intimate knowledge of my dad's material, the stuff that he was doing in the years that he would do it, and the way that he would do it. It was like an idiot savant, if you will. And I reminded him of certain things that he used to do. And he's like, geez, you were paying that close attention. So it's like I knew the show. As a kid, I would always bust the other drummer out, like, you missed this and that, and they go, shut up. And my dad would be like, he's right, you did miss it. Because I was always focused on what was going on with those drums behind my dad. And I used to go up on stage and where there were those drums and just air drum, And there's just photos of that. Me wearing cowboy boots, no less, air drumming. Not a drum in sight, but I had sticks in my hand playing along with the band. So when it came time to get the keys to the car or fly the plane, I was ready. However, my dad made sure I was well rested because I was not able to sit up and hang out up front or any of the normal things I would do. It was, why don't you get in your bunk and take a nap? I'm good. I'm not sleep. Yeah, why don't you go take a nap? So, you're sleeping and you feel the bus stop. You get up. How you feeling? I'm good. All right. Go get you something to eat. Eat, whatever, hang out. I sat up front for like 15, 20 minutes. Why don't you go take a nap? I'm like, I'm good. I'm well. Yeah, why don't you go take a nap? And it's like I felt like I was a child being sent to his room, but that was his way of ensuring that there was going to be no yawning on stage. Not that I didn't start yawning until my mid-20s, early 30s, when you're having libations. But I was fresh, wide awake, and it just, that one show that I did in Kansas made it that much more contagious that this is what I gotta do. And of course, that was on my mind, until he ultimately passed, so.
Rod, you said, quote, you don't just wake up and say, I got the blues. It's a feeling, a cumulative thing. It comes from deep within the heart and soul. It can't be manufactured, unquote. What is that feeling you mentioned like for you?
For me, it's hard to describe in terms of words. I will say this, I'm every bit of blues cliche there is. Jealous man, worried man, things of that sort. But I guess you can liken it, in my case, to how much more deeply you feel something than the average person. Yeah, you just, it's a feeling. It is just an X factor that is hard to describe, but a true bluesman, you can see it and feel it by watching them. There are times that a lot of people will argue me down and don't want to hear it, but John Mayer is a bluesman. Even though he plays hard rock and roll, Slash is a bluesman. Look at Jimmy Page. He was a bluesman. Like you just can't, you can't get around it. It's a feeling. To me, as I'm stuttering, looking for words, it's an indescribable feeling that you just, it is what it is. As much as I love like listening to, Pearl Jam or Soundgarden or Dave Matthews Band, all the things that, people of color are not normally known to listen to, I am still at my very core, my deepest core, a bluesman, because most of like the rock and roll that I listen to, they were all inspired and influenced by the blues. I like to listen to Sting. I like to listen to Marvin Gaye. I like to listen No Shame, New Edition, you know. But at my core, the roots, I'm a bluesman.
We talked about BB King, who's a longtime family friend of you guys, your godfather, one of the most influential blues musicians of all time. His
Yeah.
nickname, the King of Blues. You had the chance to first play with him back in 2003. I believe you were in your mid 20s at his namesake on Beale Street. And just a couple of years later, on his 80th birthday tour in Biloxi, Mississippi, the opportunity happened again. At the time, his drummer, Caleb Emfrey, had to sneak away and asked you to help him out. And you said, quote, "It was an opportunity for me to be on stage with my dad and BB at the same time, which was a rarity for me. It was one of those things where I was glad I was in the right place at the right time," unquote. What do you remember most about that night?
I remember that I remember walking through Biloxi Coliseum, getting ready to do my dad's set, and seeing Caleb, him saying, "Hey, don't get too far now. I need you to help me out." All I could think of was those two records they put out, Together for the First Time and Together Again Live. That's as close as I would get to that. And as a kid, I had every intention of wanting to be on the drum throne and have those two sitting in front of me, or, even if it was double drums, having those two doing whatever they wanted to do with me as their foundation. It's what I wanted to do. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. I'm not always the most positive and faithful person. I didn't know if it was going to happen. These were just lofty goals and dreams that I had. And somehow they came to fruition. And to take you back to that night of 2005, most of BB's band at one time or another were members of my dad's band. So I'm back on stage with his bass player, which is what I call my bass player, Reggie Richards. Charlie Dennis, before I came along, played guitar in my dad's band. You had Stanley Abernathy playing trumpet, Melvin Jackson playing sax. There's also James Bolden playing trumpet and Walter King playing sax, but they never played with my dad. And you got Montel Williams in a black tank top up front. You had Dickie Betts. You had Dr. John sitting next to James Toney on the B3 and keyboards and piano. You had Kenny Wayne Shepherd right there by the bass player. And so, I was kind of apprehensive, and then I felt like, okay, I need to really bring it, because, who knows, maybe one day, Dickie might want to use me for something, or, Kenny and I are the same age. Kenny and I met years ago when we were in our early 20s, and I've always admired and respected what he did and wanted to work together. So all that shit went out the window, and I was just like, don't jack up the magic that's taking place up front. Bruce Willis was also sitting up front next to my dad, So all in all, it was just an unbelievable experience. And I think that was the second or third time I was on a stage on drums with with BB, and then you fast forward 2010, and I get the call to go play with BB, sub for his drummer Tony Coleman, and do two gigs, but was asked to stay for like a full 2 weeks. Only had to play 2 shows, but
Right.
there's some pretty cool YouTube footage out there. And it's not far from where I am right now, except that I didn't have the beard, but definitely had the shaved head.
Yeah, that's the second time Kenny Wayne Shepherd's been brought up in my pod. I interviewed Zach Myers a few weeks ago, and he was talking about Kenny Wayne Shepherd.
Yeah, if it weren't for Kenny, I would have never met Zach.
Very cool. Yeah,
I met Zach. This is back in the Leisure Highway days.
Yep, we talked about that.
Leisure Highway before the Zach Myers band. So Zach and I go way back.
Yeah, Leisure Highway, actually, they played at my bar, the library, back in, I want to say 96, 97. When he was just 13, 14 years old. So that was pretty cool memories to go back and reminisce with him about some of that stuff.
Yeah, I met him. This was right as Kenny had put out the Trouble Is record, the one with Blue on Black and King's Highway, Everything's Broken, which, and a good segue, plug, they are it's the 25th anniversary of that record, so they are re-releasing it as a re-recorded record, and also they've been doing a tour. So anytime I hear anything from that record or whatever, I think about meeting Zach outside at the fair when Kenny was playing. It's funny how such differentiating lifestyles or lives, if you will, but yet find a way to be parallel.
Yeah.
Because I remember going to see Zach Myers' band when we had Michael Mo Morales playing bass and Garrett Marshall playing drums. Who doesn't love Mo?
Yeah.
I don't love Mo when we have to play, not have to play, but whenever he wants to play Crosscut Saw. His version of Crosscut Saw, which it's a very high impact cardio workout for a drummer. And every time an opportunity for us to sit in or jam together comes up, we'll do like Use Me or something, and then I'll try to excuse myself, see if there's any other drummers that want to sit in, because I know Crosscut Saw, it's time to go to work. It's time to, get the blood pumping. And then after it's all said and done, check your heart rate, maybe get an IV, because Mo can go.
Yes, he can.
Mo can go.
Yes, he can. To fast forward, for a minute, when B.B. King passed away in May of 2015, Joe Whitmer of the Blues Foundation asked you to carry Lucille, B.B. King's very famous Gibson guitar that anyone in the music business or out of the music business knows that guitar. Asked you to do that during the funeral procession, and you weren't sold on the idea at first, and you said he helped me realize that in a sense I'm honoring both BB and my dad, my two dads, as I always call them, unquote. There were so many people on Beale Street that day to honor him, and the procession with Lucille in your hands. And this is long, but I do want to read it because I think it's really good. You said, quote, "It was powerful, the overwhelming sense of love and appreciation shown towards someone who was very impactful in my life. But it was a bittersweet moment because I was being forced to say goodbye to the last piece of what my blues life had been built upon. I had just come to terms with the fact that I would never be on stage with my father again and play music with him. The last true semblance of what blues music is, it's no longer there," unquote. Powerful. As hard as that was for you to do, you did it, you made it through it. And I know that both your dad and BB were right there next to you walking down that street.
I haven't thought about those words in a long time, and I'm gonna hit bullet points, if you will, but it's gonna seem like I'm skipping around to different things. Joe Whitmer, cannot say enough great things about Joe Whitmer, personally and professionally. Joe was my main man, still is, but on the day that he approached me, he stopped being my main man. I had just finished doing a Live at 9 WREG with Will Tucker. We did a BB King tribute. And originally it was only just supposed to be Will Tucker, but this was like right before BB passed, right? That they scheduled him to do this. So ultimately, Will decided that he wanted all of us to be there. Myself, Kelly McDonald on bass, Chris Stevenson on keys. So what I did was I went in my closet and I grabbed all the BB King merch I had that I acquired from shows, that we did. It was a little snug for me, so I let Will wear this BB King baseball jersey, the button-up style, black, silver trim, BB King, Kelly had the other baseball jersey that was buttoned down. And Chris wore my Cook County Jail shirt. And I'm not sure what I wore because, it wasn't about me. But I figured it's not about me, but I figured it'd be cool if we were all wearing something that paid tribute to BB. We did a couple tunes and then we parted ways. I went to Miss Polly's to have breakfast, and that's where Joe Whitmer found me. And he's like, "Brother Rod Bland, just the man I want to see. Hey, brother Joe, how you feeling? I need a favor. Anything for you, Joe. I need you to lead the funeral procession for BB, Karen, Lucille. Anything but that." Quote, unquote. And he goes, "Why not? I'm not comfortable doing this. And, I feel like there's probably someone, better that you can get to, do this." And he goes, "I tell you what, why don't you take a couple days and think it over, and you get back to me with a final answer." Joe wasn't going to take no for an answer that day, and I doubt very seriously if I made a decision to stay with my first mind, I don't think he still would have accepted that. That I'd have been, forced into it, if you will. So I remember I had a conversation with my mom and told her, hey, this is what's happening. When I was approached to do this. What do you think? Because at that time, I'm single and, didn't have a girlfriend or significant other to, bounce anything off of or seek counsel, if you will. And she said it'd be a good thing if you did do that for him. He loved you. He loved you like you were his son. He called you his son, right? And then I talked to a couple other people, and then I called Joe. I probably had a couple cocktails, libations, and then that's when Joe just completely broke it down because I asked, "Isn't there someone else that's more deserving, or someone else that could bring like a shine to the city?" Or I looked at any and every way to screw myself out of the position I was asked to play, right? And when Joe told me what he told me, Yeah, I was like, you're right. Okay. Me, as my dad would say, let me get out of this jug, you know, step out of my own way and embrace what's presented in front of me. And that's what I did. So you get to that day, and man, I consumed a lot of caffeine. I The plan was for me to play double drums with Tony Coleman, BB King's longtime drummer, and Handy Park. Kev Moe was there. Bobby Rush was there. That's where I first met Kingfish, Christone Ingram. The first time I ever heard John Namath, him and his band did a tune called Guess Who. Uh, the lyrics, someone really loves you. Guess who? Someone really cares. Guess who? And I remember BB would always do it live, like right before he would hit Thrill Is Gone, which was always the closer, except for one period of time where it was like midway through the set. Um, but the end of the tune is someone you'll truly see that the someone who really cares is me. And that's always, I'm getting emotional right now thinking about it. But when I heard John do that, I was like floored, because more times than not, yes, someone to play a BB King song, the first one they're going to go for is Thrill Is Gone.
Right.
Maybe 3 o'clock blues, maybe Rock Me, Never Make Your Move Too Soon. And I remember Will was asked to participate, and Will's got like a pretty good catalog of BB King tunes he could just pull out just like that. And we were going to do Never Make Your Move Too Soon, and then I found out while I was in line at Starbucks at another band that was playing, stayed up till like 5 in the morning, learning that. And so I was like, another band's playing, Ghost Town Blues Band is doing it. And so we are like, okay, cool. We'll do Sweet 16 or, 3 o'clock blues. And we did. So you fast forward, my drums are still on stage next to the other drums, and I'm golf carted up the street to where the Orpheum is. There's 2 SWAT team officers. One was posing, holding Lucille. And, all right, Mr. Bland's here. I'm like, he is? Oh, me. And the guy presents, Lucille in my hands, and Dr. Herman Green, and I hate saying it like this, the late Dr. Herman Green was over my shoulder, and there's a photo of us somewhere floating around. Uh, the moment they put Lucille in my hands, it's like I had a death grip on the neck, because I knew there's going to be a lot of eyes on Memphis, on Beale Street, because of the man himself. And I was not about to drop his girl, his woman, going down the street. Blues singer's son drops Godfather's main squeeze. What a POS, right? So, you know, death grip on the neck and like holding the bottom, the base of Lucille. And I'm looking around and I see so many people. I see some friends. I see some people that I don't care to see. I and I got these 2 SWAT guys right next to me, and I remember someone rushed towards me while holding Lucille. Like, I again, death grip, and the SWAT dude like grabbed her, like, but she tried to shove something in my pocket, and the other guy grabbed her and whatever it was. I just need him to have this. He'll So I was like, holy hell, these 2 are not playing. So I'm going down the street, and we get to Alfred's and Rum Boogie, and they halted us and we stopped, and like I switched my position and just held her and Harris and Lucille, and I looked up towards the heavens, and I said, "I love you and I miss you." And by that time, that's when the tears started to fall, because walking down the street, I it was red face, believe it or not, brown as I can be. I was red faced, and I was fighting back tears. You could tell and see the emotion that I had. I have no poker face. You know when I'm angry. You'll know when I'm happy. You'll know when I'm sad. So can't fake the funk. I'm sorry. Uh, I guess you can liken that to my statement earlier about you just feel it being a bluesman. Uh, so it all came down. All the emotions just came flooding out of me, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again. And it's no disrespect. I know it was taken out of context by a close friend who was there, and I had to explain to him what I'm about to say. Surrounded by so many people on the street, in the procession, so many people there. Yet I never felt all alone like I did that day. Which goes into what I said about having to part ways with the last semblance of what my blues life was. My blues life, the blues life of Rod Bland, was always centered around Bobby Blue Bland and B.B. King. My dad's gone, and as he often referred to himself, now my other dad is gone. And here I am. Sounds selfish, and I'll agree, it is. Here I am without my two bookends, my two dads, my two guys. Um, Take your pick. My Batman and Superman of the blues. They're gone, and where do I go from here? And it wasn't about trying to have a career or a gig. It reminded me of one of my dad's songs, "Who Can I Turn To?" His cover of "Who Can I Turn To When No One Needs Me." Not that I don't feel like anyone needs me, but it was who can I turn to when I need someone. That no matter how old you get, you're gonna always want to have fatherly advice. Um, I miss the talks that I would have with my dad, and the talks I would have with BB. So when I said that I never felt so all alone, I meant every bit of that. Not to be disrespectful to anyone that was close to me at that time. It is what it is.
Back in May on the anniversary of BB's death, you said, and I want to say all this because it's long, but it's worth sharing. Quote, seven long years since our king, my bonus dad, and second boss went on to perform in a different arena. He went home to perform in God's arena in God's choir. The day he died, I felt the last link of the blues I'd grown up in and around left with him. I mean, come on. I had two of the greatest men at my fingertips without hesitation, without needing to make an appointment to speak with or see. I know you're probably sitting side by side with Blue, maybe even having a cold one, trading stories of Beale, or maybe even raising me up and prepping me for the path I'm finally undertaking. It's my sincerest hope that I'm making both of you proud with my efforts, my work with Rod Bland and the Members Only Band and at Street Savvy Unlimited, and that you trust, as you sang in this clip, that I see that your grave is kept clean. I love you, Godfather, and I miss you, unquote. What an amazing tribute, man. Amazing. What
You
are,
have a way of making. I didn't think I was gonna feel as emotional as I'm feeling right now. I didn't mean to cut you off.
no,
It's
you're
just
fine.
like,
Yeah, yeah, I just wanted you maybe to share just a couple of memories, outside of music that you had with BB and your dad that maybe, come to light.
I mean, it's always going to be somewhat music based.
Sure.
Um, there's a photo that I posted where the two of them are sitting side by side on my dad's bus, and you see BB's hand on my dad's leg, and I think it was BB's hand touching mine as I was trying to walk by. You see a hand with a wristband. That's me. And it was just one of those, like, that exchange was very quick, and it was complete nothingness in the conversation. It was very lighthearted and jovial. Uh, Maybe a dirty joke or two told before my mom made her presence felt. Um, but memories that I have with them, that's, let's call it offstage memories, was just sitting around and him. I remember him asking me, was I ready to settle down? This is when I was with my then girlfriend, my daughter's mother, and I said, I'm just about there, boss. I think. You think? Is you is or is you ain't? Because if you is, you say it. If you ain't, you say what you just said. So which one is it? I ain't. All right, well, you'll figure out eventually. And if you don't, she will. And ultimately, he was right, and she did. She, went off and did her thing. And I remember there's one time as a kid, we were in St. Louis. Yeah, just remember this one. He came and sat on my dad's bus, and we were talking about somehow baseball. And I'm not a huge baseball fan, but I remember him counting out money. He said, "Now this is your baseball money. You like football? Well, this is your football." Like, so I guess he was like making up for some lost time with birthdays or Christmas or whatever. I was probably like 7, 8, 9 years old. He was just always that guy that if he could help you, he would. If you told him you needed help, he'd help you. If he asked you if you needed help and you told him no, and he later found out you were trying to be prideful and lied to him, you're going to get a speech in addition to the help. He was just, he was a very generous person to a fault. I've often said that about people that are so kind and benevolent that, you can do this to a fault sometimes. Because let's face it, there are some people out in this world that will take advantage of you. And I remember this might have been 2001 or 2. he said, I have a lot of respect for you. And, I'm thinking it has to do with the way I treat my dad or being a drummer, this, that. No, none of that. He says, and I quote, I don't hear any bad things about you. And I also don't hear you going around saying that you Bobby Blue Bland Jr. Most people, when they get in trouble, they start hollering, I'm such and such junior. Well, I never heard you get in any trouble, but even if you didn't get in any trouble, you still not running around talking about your Bobby Blue Bland Jr. And I'm proud of you, son. Where most people take offense to me not leading with, hi, I'm Rod, son of Bobby Blue Bland, godson of BB King. He respected it. It was something that I initiated that on my own because I don't want someone to like me or admire me based on my heritage or where I come from. It's going to open a door for me no matter how hard I want to resist that. If it weren't for the gentleman in Street Savvy Unlimited, Keenan K.G. Greer, Kenneth Wheat Robinson, and hell, even Kelly Potter, if it weren't for those three telling me, listen, there's nothing to be ashamed of, which I was not ever, but you don't have to not allow your heritage and your legacy to open a door for you. Once the door is open, it's up to you what you do with it. And it's taken a long time for me to begin to process that. Because again, I don't want to be misconstrued as someone who is riding coattails. Yes, my father and BB paved the way, not just for me, but for a lot of musicians, whether they have worked for them, or as they would say, worked with them, or their families, what have you. They paved the way, they laid the groundwork, the foundation. It's up to someone like me to, at my modest best, attempt to further smoothen out the road, if you will.
You've been playing on Beale Street now for over 25 years, so many different clubs. And you said, quote, it's nice to know that I have support and backing from various venues and their managers and owners. It's not often a sideman drummer gets a lot of love and respect, but they go above and beyond the call of duty to show you how important you are to them, to make you feel like you're not just an employee or just a sideman musician, but an integral part of their venues, unquote. Feeling wanted and loved by so many people, having all the fans that love listening to your music. It must be just an incredible feeling that someone who is not a musician, just like you talked about the feeling, they just don't know that feeling. This has been a pretty exciting and wild ride for you the last 25 years, hasn't it?
Without a doubt. That quote you just read was one of those nights where I was thinking about who I've worked for, with, and these three names. The late Tommy Peters,
Yep.
the late Bud Chittum, Wilbur Hensley, Kelly Potter. I didn't see me being somewhat of a regular fixture at Blue City Cafe or Club 152, BB King's. If anything, I saw myself as a fly under the radar, stick and move, but I'm very fortunate that in some way, shape, form, and again, I don't doubt that it was due to my father and BB, but again, a door opens and it's what you do with the opportunity. And I've made some really great friends, some great friends that have become family. And the type of family that once I lost my dad and then lost BB, you know, they wouldn't leave me alone. And there are times I like my privacy. I like to be left the hell alone. Um, but there were guys and girls as excuse me, ladies like your Cindy Wilson or your Kim Hansen that they weren't going for the BS. They wanted to make sure that I was okay, that I wasn't spiraling into a depression, which realistically, yes, I did. Um, I was insanely close to my dad. You know how they say mama's boys or whatever, or daddy's girls. You know, my dad was my dude. And there were times I didn't want to get out of bed, but I did because I remembered what my dad always said. You know, you got to make hay while the sun's shining. And of course, a famous quote that we like to use in my immediate inner circle, quoting Bobby Rush: "One monkey don't stop no show." And you know, I had a great support system for someone that didn't seek out grief grief therapy counseling. And I'm a huge advocate of therapy. In recent years, I've learned just how taxing um, life can be these days on the mental health and the psyche, with everything that you have to deal with as an adult. This is not, we are not of the generation that our parents came from, or even our you know elder siblings, if you will. This is a different day and age. Um, doesn't mean it's any better, doesn't mean it's any worse. It's just things are different. So I am all about having someone that you can talk to, whether they are a professional caliber or just someone that's unbiased, that will sit and listen and let you talk. Never many times that Kelly Potter has let me talk. Wheat lets me talk. Lets me talk a little bit. And then he has so much to say, which more times than not always proves to be not so much what I want or wanted to hear, but need to hear. Um, I've got some other friends that I will respect their privacy and let their anonymity stay strong. But and the two of them are females. They have been really good to me with letting me vent and offering input where it's warranted. And again, just sometimes you need someone to just listen.
I have an anonymous question from a fan of yours. He wants to know why you have no game and why you're always out. He said you'll know who it
because
is.
because that anonymous person whose name was mentioned
No, he said you can mention his name, so you can say it. He was being
uh,
funny.
yeah, unbeknownst to him, I just don't display quote unquote game. And just because he thinks I'm out, don't mean I'm out. Love you, Woo.
You know, speaking of him, I had Wilbur and Kelly on a few months ago, and they talked about how much they liked you and what a good guy you are, which we know that.
It's all lies.
You all worked together and you played at Club 152 frequently. Tell us
Yep.
a little bit about your relationship with those guys.
Uh, let's start with the anonymous elephant in the room. Wilbur is like no one you'd ever expect to meet. He's big in so many ways, his stature, his height, but he casts this like big glow, right? He's got this aura about him that just reeks of being cool. And if you don't recognize it, he has no qualms telling you about it if your name is Rod Bland. So Wilbur, I've got to spend some time around and learn a trick or two about certain things. As he would put clearly, it's not about game. Um, I've enjoyed working for him, working with him, and the privilege of me calling him my friend and then sometimes him calling me his brother. I'm grateful because I don't think if it weren't for Wilbur having me on his main stage at 152, excuse me, I don't think we'd be having this conversation right now because I wouldn't have been so visible multiple nights a week on Beale playing drums. Which leads me to the big brother, Kelly Potter. Kelly Potter has a way of putting all the right pieces together, pulling ingredients to making like what would appear to you to be a nasty gumbo because he's pulling so much and adding so many things, but it's like the best meal you'll ever have. Kelly, if it weren't for Kelly, I would have never met some important people in my life, such as I'm going to start with Grant Garland. Grant and I did a tribute to my dad for his 80th birthday in 2010. If it weren't for Kelly, my relationship, my brotherhood with Keenan and Kenneth, KG and Wheat, respectively, would have never happened. I would not have this cover art. I would not have these memories. Um, if it weren't for Kelly, I would have. If it weren't for Kelly, I wouldn't have known and learned what it's like to be family with those you work with. I wouldn't know about support, brotherhood. There's no other way to describe it. Without Kelly Potter, I would have never known what a brotherhood on Beale Street was like. In a world where businesses are mainly about the bottom line, it wasn't like that with Club 152, Blue City, Miss Polly's, the general store. None of that none of that did they lead with. I'm grateful to Taiji, Goose, Bud Chittum, Taney Childress, Kelly Potter, Big Kenny, Cindy, Big T. I could go on. Before my dad got sick and ultimately passed, there was never ever a sense of brotherhood and a feeling of love and bond and respect. I didn't learn that until I started being associated with all those guys. And it's something I try to carry with me. I'm guilty of being a very personal person when I should be, in my opinion, when I should be more personable. It's hard to compartmentalize and separate business and personal.
It is.
I'm so guilty of being spoiled working with Kelly and Wilbur, and where business and personal, those lines were blurred, if not evaporated. Not everyone does business like that. Not everyone can. The one thing that I'm working on is knowing the difference, or being able to spot that they don't have those qualities that Kelly and Wilbur have, or that Bud had. Oh my God, and JJ, God rest his soul. JJ, whenever he would see me, and it's my fault because I was such a huge, still am, fan of The Rock, but I took the People's Champ, and okay, I'm the People's Drummer, The Rock. So the Rod. So every time JJ would see People's Drummer, baby, People's Drummer, what's up, brother? Come on in here, And I remember when he found out he was going to be a father, he's like, "Man, you gonna give my son drum lessons? People's drummer, people's teacher." And I miss that guy. JJ was great for the ego.
Yeah.
He's good for your soul, good for your heart. Always had a smile on his face. The people that I've encountered working on Beale, in every way, shape, form, fashion, they are responsible for providing in my life with something, good, bad, or the ugly. They are all, let me just say it like this, some are responsible for having a good level of impact, a touch, sometimes a hard touch, on my life.
I met
and
Kelly.
For that, I say thank you.
I met Kelly about 6 years ago at my old store, Sleepy Z's. He came in with his wife to get a mattress, and it was like we knew each other. You know what I mean? We obviously had a lot of friends in common, but I never met him in person. But it was just such an easy conversation. It was like we were already on that friendship level. And with Wilbur, I've known Wilbur since the Night Move days and Club 616. And I've shared this before, and I thanked him because he's always been so nice to me.
Right.
I never paid to get in any of his clubs and everything like that. And just was always just, over accommodating. And he didn't have to be that way. And so I really appreciate it. So it was so much fun having them on.
I went to 616 once, and this was in 1995. Slash's Snake Pit they were starting their tour, and 616 was the first night of the tour, and I thought that Matt Sorum was going to be playing drums, and I was so geeked out, wanting to, psyched, I should say. Geeked out is that means something else. So I've been told. Uh, I was hyped, hoping I'd get to see Matt play live and blah blah. Blah. Let down that it wasn't Matt. Brian Tichy was the drummer, but so I got my tickets and passes through Slash's people, and the next day was the ACT Saturday morning. I was a little raggedy the next day. We didn't get to stay for the whole show, but I was like, this is so cool, And then you fast forward to the 2000s, if you will, and me meeting Wilbur and, overhearing a conversation about the old 616 is like, and yeah, I used to own that place. I used to run it. I said, really? Yeah. I said, he used to go there. I was like, I only went one time. That was to see Slash the Snake Pit. And he was like, yeah, great gig. And he, told me some stories and stuff. And then he also told me about when he brought in Marilyn Manson to play. And let me bring this a little closer since I'm trying to be like my dad and sit Indian style. That's one thing my dad always shocked me with and impressed me with was the fact that he could sit Indian style, sitting up on the bus or sitting up in his room, like if we're like out on the road and stuff. So I'm trying to, I'll never sing like him, but at least I can do certain things like him, and sitting Indian style is one of the things I'm trying to make sure I do that more often. But yeah, finding out that Wilbur in 616, and I was like, wow, cool. I'm done. Sorry.
That's okay.
We got you off.
No, I just wanted to make sure you got out everything you want to say. You said, quote,
never.
Now and again, I attempt to entertain the crowd at BB King's, or as Laney McMillan likes to say, be nice to the people with a drum solo. I'm so frantic and sometimes fearful of overthinking, which means overstinking instead of being in the moment. Music is first and foremost my greatest first love, and it's in a dead end tie with the drums, unquote. You talked about being in the moment, Rod, and, we hear that a lot, how important it is in life. And it obviously isn't just in general, but it's also extremely important when you're performing on stage too, isn't it?
It really is. And this is the hypocritical part, or should I say, this is where I contradict myself with that statement. Wheat will tell me so often that I'm not living in the moment or embracing the moment. With certain things like, being out and about, but I live in the moment when I'm on stage. When I'm behind that kit, everything else shuts down. With my mom being of her advanced age, I check my phone to see if I have a missed call or a text from her, even though I have my phone set on the workout thing because I have my watch tracking my calories or whatever, because I have such horrible eating tendencies. But it's like, I tell my kids at School of Rock that when you're playing, always keep your eyes open, because you don't know who you need to communicate with, whether it be the bass player, guitar player, or the singer. But when it's time for me to do a drum solo, and I'm a fan of watching other drum solos. Like, one of my favorite solos to see from a drummer that quote unquote is local. Hubert the H Bomb Crawford, who played with James Brown and Mark Farner, but I got to know him from playing with the original Eric Gales band. Excuse me, and also the Eugene Gales Real Blues Project. And then there's Marless Flowers, who played with Angie Stone, Preston Shannon, and he's been a mainstay in the All Star band at BB's. Marless just has this thing about him where as he's soloing, he can go blisteringly fast and like super duper quiet. Excuse me. And he can also add a flair of entertainment. Me, on the other hand, I'll try my best to do some things I've heard from John Bonham or Mitch Mitchell, John Jabbo Starks, Uncle Jab, if you will. Peony. I even stole something from Hubert Crawford. He's got this triplet thing he likes to do where he starts out really slow, like baka do do da da do do da da do da da do, and then it gets faster and faster. You know. Then I would try to incorporate that into a solo, or play teasers of songs, like when I'm stuck and can't think of anything, I reach back into my bag of tricks, as I call it, and I'll play the opening drum fill of Michael Jackson's "Rock with You." Boom, da da boom, ba da 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 da. I did this with Ashton, and Christy as well. All night, right? So the crowd, it pops the crowd. They know the beat or whatever, and they like, okay, that's cool. Then I might drop in the Belle Biv DeVoe's "Poison." What's another one I like to do? This is where I show my age. EU, the butt. Boom, pop, do, 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 pop. And like I'll even like stop playing and go, ow. And like, it'll pop the rest of the band and the crowd too, because let's face it, most people that come into BB's at night, they're over 30. They have XM radio. They know the old school R&B jams and stuff. What I'm working on though is trying to throw in Moby Dick from Zeppelin. Then just the intro, because no one's gonna like play the whole thing, bass and guitar player with me. So yeah, that's my attempt, as Laney would say, at being nice to the people. And when I do a solo at the end of the set, or even at the end of the gig, Laney will go, "You are nice to the people. You're nice to them." I was like, well, I'm the people's drummer. I got to be nice to the people. But there you go, son. Proud of you. But yeah, I said all of that to say this, that when I'm soloing, my eyes are closed. The very thing I tell my kids don't do when they're playing drums, unless you're featured for 2 minutes or whatever, however long, they go, all right, give the drummer some. You close your eyes and just have at it. But when you're playing with other people and it's like you're all firing on all cylinders, you gotta be, you're the captain. I don't care what they say. The drummer's the most important person on that stage. That the drummer or the singer can't do what the singer wants to do. The guitar player can't, keyboard player can't, whatever. They need you.
Live on Beale Street, the album you just showed, a tribute to Bobby Blue Bland. It was
Mm-hmm.
released in July of 2021 on NOLA Blue Records, and you recorded it in Memphis, back in May of 2019 at BB King's. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, there could have been no other place to record it but there. Your dad was one of the most incredible blues vocalists ever in the United States, and he played for over 40 years. He was inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Blues Hall of Fame, the Memphis Music
Mm-hmm.
Hall of Fame, won a
Mm-hmm.
Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award too. There's honestly probably nothing more that he could have achieved in the music industry. Just phenomenal. Tell us a little bit about the album, why you wanted to do it, and how you felt after it came out and was released for everyone to hear.
So I spoke briefly about Grant Garland helping me pay tribute to my dad on his 80th birthday. Along with Grant Garland and something called Rod Bland and Friends, a mutual friend of ours, my childhood hermano, Patrick Dodd, Kelly McDonald on bass, and my dad got to see a little bit of that, but I never got to do anything outside of that one night. I think my dad seen me play maybe 2 or 3 times without him being a part of the show, right?
Right.
So when he got ill, I started thinking like he's gonna go without I'm trying to choose my words carefully, but I'll just be blunt, without proper music fanfare for me, to him, for him. And that didn't set well with me. And still kind of doesn't. But so I'm on tour with Reverend Sean Amos in the Netherlands in 2016. And I can't sleep. And so I have my iPad with me, and I'm just, surfing, trying to find something on Netflix, and I'm getting these messages from Gina Hughes of the Galaxy Agency out of Nashville, asking me to participate in her IBC showcase for 2017. And I'm thinking, all right, she wants me to play drums with someone she's representing. Cool. I'm like, yeah, sure. What do you want me to do? I want you to do a tribute to your dad. Don't want to do that. And, she's like, why not? It's kind of too soon. It really wasn't. It was the fear factor with me that who am I going to get to sing? Because he's got such a huge body of work that it's not fair to try to, task one voice to do, his material, because it ranges. So again, she sold me on the idea, and that's when Rod Bland and Friends turned into Rod Bland and the Members Only Band, because you need a catchy name to go along with it. I'm not going to go up there as the Rod Bland Band. Just wouldn't, it would sound just bland. And then, the point of the performance is it's about him. So you take one of his signature songs from the 80s, Members Only. Rod Bland and the Members Only Band. And the original concept was that the members of the band were going to be members of my dad's band, or people that have played with my dad in some way, shape, form, or fashion. So we did the IBC thing. It was a short 6-song set. And then in March, I got wind that they were creating a statue for him that they were going to place on Beale. And they were going to unveil it during the BMAs, Blues Music Awards week. So they were going to do it that Friday, the day after the awards. And, that's cool. Everyone crowd around a statue for 20, 30 minutes. Then what? So in my mind, I was like, we should do a full on tribute show to him. And talking with Gina, so we put our heads together, and that's quote unquote the real first RB and the MOB gig. We had various guest singers coming in. I remember the late Michael Ledbetter. I hate saying that because I miss him. Great guy, great vocalist.
Too many people we
Um,
know have passed away too young.
yeah, Michael Ledbetter and Monster Mike Welch together. Sugar Ray Rayford, Janova Magnus, and then Chris Stevenson playing keys. He sang a couple songs, and then it was good, and we tried to record it just for prosperity, and then we did it again in 2018. Again, Sugar Ray Rayford, and you had Ledbetter and Welch again, and I am a piece of crap. I don't remember who else played in 2018. And Andrew Duncanson and some other people. And then we did it again in 19. By that time, unfortunately, Ledbetter had passed away. But Duncanson came in. Kenny Neal played with us. Johnny Rawls played with us. And then Jerome Chisholm, who is the featured vocalist of the All-Star Band, he played with us. Ashton Riker, sorry. Ooh, sorry. He played with us in 2018 as well as 19. And so we had John Namath in both 18 and 19. I think 17 too, maybe. So you had such a huge set list, and not all the songs came out well because of feedback in the PA, maybe a false start on my part, or just something just wasn't right. But of a certain batch of songs, the songs that made it to the EP were the ones that did require a lot of effort with, boosting parts here, because it was all live. And when it was finally over and, said and done, I was like, okay, now how do I release this? And then the pandemic happens. So the only thing about the pandemic that was positive for me was I received a grant that paid for mastering, which really just made things come to life. And I was able to execute a partnership for an exclusive licensing agreement with Nola Blue, and she believed, Sally Bankston believed in the material, and was a fan of my father, and wanted to see it represented by her and her awesome label. And we set up a licensing agreement, and my very first project, my very first record, it's it's special to me because, again, you want to put out a record, you want to put out a project, you don't know if it's going to happen, and you don't know how well it's going to be received. But again, um, eternally grateful to Street Savvy Unlimited, as well as Nola Blue and Blind Raccoon, all of us working together, we put out a product that garnered an award for Best Emerging Artist Album from the 2022 Blues Music Awards. And I ended up receiving an award from Living Blues Magazine for Most Outstanding Musician for Drums. Again, all of these are things that were not in my foremost of thoughts. I didn't think these were more attainable milestones. Yet here we are. And, I'm, again, not to sound like a scratch CD for the kids out there, it's these small things that look like records, but they're not. They're CDs. When they would scratch, they would, but I would be totally in the wrong and remiss if I didn't say how grateful I am to Sally and Nola Blue and Betsy at Blind Raccoon, and of course, KG and Wheat at Street Savvy Unlimited. We wouldn't have this aspect of the conversation on top of everything else we've talked about so far. I'm grateful. And just knowing that this was my reintroduction, if not introduction, to a genre of music that I hold so sacred and dear, and being able to not so much step out from behind the drum kit, but kind of not have my drum kit right behind my father and say that this is about him, this is for him, this is the opening act, the opening match of a card, whether it's MMA or boxing or wrestling. This is my entryway into expanding my career, not so much as a front man, but as a key player, if you will, in the blues, and doing my part to help keep my father's legacy thriving and relevant. When it comes to blues, more often than not, everyone immediately thinks of B.B. King or Albert King, because a lot of people misconstrue blues as guitar driven or even harmonica driven. Very rare that someone, unless you really are an astute blues fan, does my dad's name come up amongst the top 3, 5, what have you. And the blues is more than just guitars and harmonicas, fedoras and shades and whatnot. I mean, look at Coco Taylor, look at Ruth Brown, Katie Webster. Otis Clay. Otis Clay was more of a soul singer, but my dad and Otis were those soulful singers when it came to blues. If it weren't for Uncle O, I would have never gotten to play a song that, hang on one second, give my ears a little bit of a break from wearing these. My dad, on his California album, which was on the ABC Dunhill label, which has all been absorbed by, Universal Music, before that Geffen, before that MCA. Once my dad's contract with Duke Records expired, ABC picked him up. So the California album was his first offering under that umbrella, and also trying to get him to cross over. Um, there's a song called "This Time I'm Gone for Good." Um, that was the final song played at my dad's memorial service, and I remember I used to love that song. I heard the live version. I was like, yes. And then sitting next to my mother at First Baptist, and the first note started, and I was like, that just hit home. Never mind that I had just seen his body the day before, day of the funeral, but that song playing, and then like them. Yeah, I mean, because it's true. This time I'm gone for good. But the lyric was, when I leave this time, make sure it's understood that this time I'm gone for good. So I never got to play that live with him, and would practice it, whenever I was, had the time with headphones and a CD player. So I'll have to say this. If it weren't for Otis Clay, I would have never played that song, period. And I remember kicking into it at rehearsal in Chicago, and the guys turned around and looked at me like, "Oh, you know this one?" Like, "Yeah, you played this before?" Nope. But I've been hearing it for years. And you know, it, that was in 2015 with Otis. So it took till then for me to even be somewhat comfortable letting the song, like, stereo wise, play past the first 10, 15 seconds. And now I think we did it at we did it this year. Rod Bland, members only band. We did it twice so far. We've done it at BB's during the BMAs, and then we did it in Handy Park for their Blues on Beale series that they had. I've gotten now to the point where it's not a discomfort. It doesn't haunt me. I embrace it. I live it. I love it. Um, in some strange way, I feel a closer kinship to him when I listen to anything, especially the live stuff that I've gotten access to from the years of me just easing into the world, or before I was a gleam in his eye. And I am always down to find any video footage of him and just revel in who he is, or who he was, I should say, before I came along. Um, so songs like "This Time I'm Gone for Good" have I want to incorporate that into our set. I'm basically building a huge catalog because, let's be honest, it's a glorified cover band. Rod Bland and the Members Only Band is a glorified Bobby Blue Bland cover band. Only difference is it's his son pulling certain people together that can embody, embrace, and put that music out to an audience the way that it needs to be done, the way that he would have done it. Because again, members only band, members that have either played with him in some shape, form, capacity, or that have a connection to him, whether it be solely through me or a slight indirect connection with him.
I know.
Apologize. I can
No,
just go.
this is why I do this. This is what I want. What you're doing is what I want. Um, I know for a fact that Bobby and BB, when you got those awards, were hugging and high fiving up in heaven.
Yeah. I leaned over and told my date, I said, I can't wait to just get out of here. And of course, she was thinking that I was thinking something else, but it was mainly to get out of those boots I was wearing because my feet were killing me. I was still dealing with, I ruptured my Achilles tendon December of last year. Yeah. And played the gig that night in a boot. Like I'd sit up early in the day and everything. And I remember I called Ash and I said, dude, in pain. I'm headed to Campbell Clinic. Jack, he goes, bro, do we need to find another drummer? I was like, oh no, I'm gonna be there.
How did you do that? I mean, my dad was a podiatrist, and I remember him telling me about rupturing your Achilles tendon and how painful that is. I mean, you could just do it walking, but he said it's painful.
I was running upstairs in a hurry, and what I thought I planted my foot was probably not all the way planted, and I sprung up and came tumbling down, hit both elbows, almost hit my head, and this is how stupid I was. I eased over and took the shoes off I was wearing, and put on some other shoes, saying that, but like it was literally like the human equivalent to a flat tire. Like there was nothing there. So I got to Campbell. Thankfully I got there before it would have turned into after hours. I think I got there at 3:45. If I'd have gotten there 5 or 10 minutes late, I would have not have made it to the gig. But they x-rayed it and told me, you ruptured it. I was like, is that ruptured, torn? Is there a difference? Yeah, I'm just like, I don't know shit. I remember calling Wheat and KG, and they're like, oh my God. And what are you going to do? So I'm going to work. Mercifully, it was my left foot, the hi-hat foot. So it serves me right because for years, whenever I'd see friends in the boots or whatever, I'd always call them the RoboCop foot, RoboCop sock, or whatever. Yeah. I finally got myself one. And, I couldn't do any cute, fancy stuff I was doing with the hi-hats. It's like playing with like my foot halfway on, halfway off. And the boot is so heavy, so it didn't take much pressure to close the hats. So I basically played in that thing from December 2nd all the way up to, I think, midway February. And the doctor's like, it's about time you come out of that boot, either use it or lose it. And I've never heard a doctor say that to anyone, let alone me. And I was also still teaching kickboxing fitness classes. I just didn't kick, with the left leg. I would. I was like, okay, 1-1, 6, front kick. And I'd like grab the bag and raise my left leg up. And when it came to doing push-ups, I had to do them on my knees, bear push-ups, but I couldn't do it and then set my weight back in my heel like a child's pose. Jump squats were out. Lunges were definitely out. But I still did the crunches and sit-ups and stuff, but it was painful walking around, limping around in that thing on the mats until they put some kind of guard in there to keep my heel was just very calloused. But nonetheless, I played drums, did not miss a gig. Um, Grace period for like, getting there on time and or a lot of help, assistance bringing in gear. Um, Stubborn, wasn't gonna not play. But yeah, it forced me to stop using the double pedal because can't do that with the with your foot gimmicked up. Uh, First time I'd gone back to playing a single pedal and I don't know how long, and it wasn't until maybe 3 weeks ago that I started back using my double pedal. And not that I'm Tommy Lee or Alex Van Halen, but like it's got a nice carrying bag and I can attach it to my solo case and drag it along with me. But yeah, it was no fun. And showering, like trying to hold on to something while you're trying to bathe.
Right.
Yeah, that was for the birds. Did not like that at all.
I wanted to read something that you wrote about your dad, and it hits home with me because my dad actually passed away just a few months before your dad. And my dad passed away on Valentine's Day of 2013. So it hit home with me. And before I read it, I just want to make sure that you're okay from an emotional standpoint, me reading this, because it's pretty long and it's touching.
We made it this far. If it happens, it happens. So
okay. Quote, "It was today, a few minutes shy of 5:30 p.m. My world changed forever. 9 years ago today, June 23rd, 2013, I watched my father take his final breath as I held his hand. I'll never be able to forget the facial expression he had when he transitioned. I'll also never forget how truly heartbroken and uncontrollably empty I felt at that moment and would feel for some time to come. In the years that have passed since his passing, today I'm able to be more at peace with his physical absence. I've been trying more to celebrate him as opposed to the mourning I've done for so long. I've seen his likeness embodied in the statue, his music featured in more movies and television, and recently on an episode of The Simpsons. And I finally released a tribute live LP in his honor, which garnered a Best Emerging Blues Artist Album from the Blues Foundation, these music awards this year. I know he's always with me. Wherever I may roam, I'll hold him in my thoughts and actions. I love you. I miss you. I will always continue to do my best with keeping your name and legacy alive and thriving. Your faithful, undisputed son of blue, Rod," unquote. I don't have any questions. I don't have anything to add to that. I just thought it was really special, and I wanted to read that.
Although I'm seated, I stand by everything you just read. There comes moments when I question myself as to did I do right by him when he was here? Did I do enough for him while he was here? There are times I toss and turn, lie awake at night, because I feel like there's some things I probably could have done differently while he was here to ease my mind that he was proud of me before he passed on. But I've learned to relinquish that. I've learned to embrace the fact that yes, he was proud of me, and that I actually know that he was proud of me before he passed. There are things that, for example, KG and Wheat have pointed out to me. They'll remind me of things that I've told them in passing. whether it was at a time when we were working on strategies and concepts for, you know, cover art, or back in the day when we were on a set break from 152 and we were just hanging out, bumping into them while they were doing whatever for Kelly. Um, I had to switch. My leg was falling asleep. Um, you never, in my case, want to take for granted. And again, speaking for myself, I don't want to take for granted that I might have missed an opportunity to pay homage, tributize him, excuse me, and I don't want any missed opportunities to again continue his legacy and have it be thriving. You know, we're of an age where blues music is not relative in a pop sense of the word, but it's still so influential and sewn into the fabric of any and every genre known to human ears. No matter how hard you try, you cannot deny the blues. Rod Bland quote.
Rod, what are the most important lessons that you've learned in life?
Be a man of your word. Uh, Try to help when and where you can. And something that I'm wrestling with in terms of how to do it is being able to protect and love the ones you love and want to protect. Sometimes the best way to love someone is from afar. I'm wrestling with that one. Uh, Sometimes the best way to protect someone is to let them seek whatever it is they're looking for, and without being overbearing about it or overly and excessively reminding them that you're there for them. They know. Maybe it's your ego that I need to tell this person, I need to remind this person, I need to show this person, whether it's a lover, partner, or even a friend. If you're lucky, sometimes they're all three, but if you're blessed, wait, we're all blessed, but sometimes it's better to just let certain things and certain people be, because the more you try, quote a BB lyric, harder you try, the further I'll go away. So, um, whether it be a friend that's got like an addiction issue, you can't want it anymore for them than they do to stop the addiction or beat the addiction. You can tell them how much you love them, but there's only so many times you can show them until they are ready to see it for themselves. So, man of your word, love and protect the ones you want to protect and love. Those are the two, honestly, because those are the two most important lessons I've learned from them.
How can people find you and follow you on social media?
Just open your browser. I'm kidding. You can find me on Facebook at Rod Bland, RODD BLAND. There's also a website, www.rodbland.com, RODDBLAND.com. Instagram at the Rod Bland, and also RB and the MOB, the letters. Same thing with Facebook. We have one for them as well. YouTube, Rod Bland, also RB and the MOB. And there's even RB and the MOB.com, which stands for Rod Bland and the Members Only Band.
I like that picture. Good smile. Good smile.
So the funny thing, we'll start with a smile. I don't always smile in my photos. You might catch the lippy grin.
I do that a lot.
Very, very, very seldom do you catch the chappas. So Wheat and KG were trying their damnedest to get me to crack pop. Smile, quit trying to be all hard. You know you ain't hard. Well, unless, hey, easy. We're not going to name any names. And I would cut them off so they would catch me like smiling. So the significance of this cover is my dad's album record, Members Only. Same green lettering, door, him wearing a tuxedo. And you can't see it in here, but that's his watch that he wore in the original cover. And the idea stemmed from a conversation that I had with Wheat. And it's about 1 or 2 in the morning. And then 2 days later, he sent me my dad's album cover, Members Only. Like, my dad's here. But it said, Rod Bland, Members Only Band, live on Beale Street. And I was like, whoa. And, the original thought was, let's go to Jackson, Mississippi and try to find that particular door. And then we got told an interesting story. And so I'm at liberty to go into detail with that. So again, studio magic, if you will. Wheat and KG magic.
Awesome.
I mean, I went to Memphis Music on Beale and found a copy of Members Only, and they had a copy of my EP, and I just put it side by side, and it was like, I never thought. Yeah, I think there's one here. You give me a second.
Yeah.
Well, I thought there was one. Hang on. Definitely gives my ears right to breathe. All right.
Oh man.
All right.
That's so great. That's so great. Oh God, yeah. I'm so glad you got that just to see the side by side. That's awesome.
And I don't ever think I could thank Street Savvy Unlimited. I'm legit, like, they've got me in the same pose with the hand over the wrist, the gold watch showing. I mean, I don't think there's a better tribute than this.
Great.
Yeah, it's funny. The only complaints I've ever received about my EP was that it was only 6 songs. It was short. Well, that's what an EP is. Anywhere between 4, 5, 6 songs. Yeah.
Rod actually is he performs live a lot, as we talked about. He's going to be performing on Thursday, October 20th at 7:30 at BB King's in Memphis with Ashton Reich and the Memphis Royals. Has that changed?
No. Yes.
Okay. That's what was on this. Sorry about that.
Yeah. That was before we got word that there's a private party at BB's.
Okay. So when's the next time you're playing there? This is going to air next week.
I'm actually going to be playing on the 17th, which is a Monday.
Okay.
Then it'll be back to regularly scheduled programming at BB King's on Thursdays. I'm reaching for my phone because I think there's a gig coming up. Yes, never mind. Don't need the phone. October the 23rd. It's a Sunday. I'm at Lafayette's Music Room in Overton Square with Will Tucker.
Cool.
So there's that, and there is Bobby Blue Bland Day in Barrettville, Tennessee, coming up. That's Saturday, the 22nd. I will not be playing, but I will be there with my mom. Sorry, stretching the leg.
Okay.
It's in Barrettville, Tennessee / Rosemark, where my dad was born. So yeah, it's free, open to the public, and who knows, maybe there might be some Rod Bland merch, like this shirt, or the Rod Bland Members Only Band shirt, or maybe an EP, drumstick pin, stickers. I was gonna make a joke about maybe wheat will be available but it's just I need my business partner, and Kelly would probably kill me.
I heard so many and I heard and learned so many great things today. That I never knew about you, your dad, BB, and as I mentioned, having a live music bar. Back in the late 90s, I really feel like I have a special appreciation for really great music that makes people feel good. And that's what all three of you did. I mean, they did throughout their entire career. You did now, you did back then with them. And I see many more accolades and awards for you in the future. And I really appreciate you coming on today. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me, Michael. I really enjoyed myself, and I apologize once again to you and to your listeners. I can be long-winded.
It's okay. You got it. I want people to say what they want to say. So I appreciate you doing that and being raw and real.
Could be a title for a record, Raw and Real. Okay. We'll cut you in. Finder's fee.
Sounds great, man. Thanks again for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
All right. My pleasure.
Okay.